100 years of America's beginning. A timeline of the actions leading to the birth of America. 1607, the initial establishment of Jamestown. 1620, the making of the 13 colonies. 1675 to 1678, King Philip's War. 1692, Salem witch trials. The initial landing at Jamestown. Jamestown, founded in 1607, was the first successful permanent English settlement in what was now called the United States. Jamestown thrived for nearly 100 years. Jamestown was a capital of the Virginia colonies. In 1699, Jamestown was abandoned and the capital moved to Williamsburg. Jamestown was not the first successful European colonies. Spain founded St. Augustine in 1565. In the late 1800s, a preservationist group took over the colony. The founding of Jamestown had the blessing of England's King James I. The colony was financed by the Virginia Company, which was owned by private investors. The colonists were expected to find valuable commodity or a route to East Asia. The bitter truth of Jamestown. 104 men established Jamestown. Only 38 were still alive in January of 1608. Most men died to famine, but others had excruciating deaths. Swellings, fluxes, burning fevers, and wars. The men experienced harsh winters with drought and a lack of food, causing famine. At the start of the many deaths, the colonists would be buried in unmarked graves to prevent the Indians from discovering how many men had died.
Alright, founding of the new 13 colonies. So every one of the 13 colonies was established between 1622 and 1730. The first to declare its independence was Rhode Island, also founded in 1636. Massachusetts, founded in 1630. The city of Boston was named after a city in England. It was also the home of two major conflicts in the American Revolution, the Boston Massacre in 1770 and the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Connecticut, founded in 1635, was actually founded by Dutch settlers and not British. They came from Massachusetts to establish several colonies. Onto the middle colonies. New York, founded in 1624, was established in 1624, and it was actually named after the Duke of York. It was established as part of the province of York, along with Vermont. Delaware, founded in 1638, was originally named after the Delaware Company. It was actually first of the 13 colonies to become a state. Pennsylvania, founded in 1682, and New Jersey, founded in 1664. It was actually governed as a royal colony, and in 1676, New Jersey divided into East and West New Jersey. 1702, East and West combined to make New Jersey as a whole again. The southern 13 colonies, Maryland was founded in 1632. Virginia was founded in 1607. It was actually the first of the home of the first settlement and representative government of America. North and South Carolina were both founded in 1653 and were originally one colony until 1729. Georgia was founded in 1733 and it was actually named after the King George II.
Life in colonial America. So the farmers survived mainly off of the profit they made from their cash crops. Their main cash crops consisted of tobacco, beans, peas, carrots, and cabbage. In colonists in areas such as Jamestown, they used slave labor to cultivate the cash crops. They used agriculture, and they also used strong animals like horses and oxen to transport their heavier resources. Other animals they raised on their farms included pigs, sheep, cows, and chickens. The roles in the colonies. Men were responsible for the traditional roles of providing housing and hunting for food. They also were responsible for the more diplomatic activities, such as voting and serving in the militia. Women were the nurturers. They assisted with the farming, and they also performed their duties such as sewing, cleaning, cooking, and gardening, and they taught their children that as well. Slaves typically tended to the animals and the agriculture, including the crops, while raising the children. And the education and the government consisted of the girls, who were given no academic education, and they were expected to be taught household skills and how to perform their duties as they assumed their roles as women. Boys were taught and sent to school. They were given a basic education until the age of 15, when the wealthier children could be sent off to college or university. Women were not allowed to vote, and neither were the slaves. Wealthy men were able to vote, and they could also hold positions in office, while middle-class men were only able to vote, and many of the colonies were run by governors. The religion in the colonies: New England colonists were a group of Puritans who led strict and orderly lives in the eyes of God and did not allow for religious freedom. The colonies were also a heavily Catholic-based civilization, and Pennsylvania was founded by the Quakers. Puritans believed that God had made an agreement with them and that they were to live life according to the scriptures while reforming the Anglican Church and convincing others to stop their sinful ways of life.
King Philip's War. King Philip's War was a conflict between New England Indian inhabitants and New England colonists and their allies. First, it was called the First Indian War, the Metcalfe's War, Metcomet's War, or Pocahontas War. The timeline was between 1675 and 78. The war is named for Metacomet, the Wampanoag chief who adopted the name Philip because of the friendly relations between his father, Massasoit, and the Mayflower Pilgrims. The war continued in most northern reaches of New England until the signing of the Treaty of Costco Bay in April 1678. Metacom was the chief's son. He became chief in 1662 after Massasoit's death. Metacom, however, did not maintain his father's alliance between the Wampanoags and the colonists. The colonists insisted that the peace agreement in 1671 should include the surrender of Indian guns. Then 3 Wampanoags were hanged for a murder in Plymouth Colony in 1675, which increased the tension between the colonies. The colonies then assembled the largest colonial army that New England had yet seen, consisting of 1,000 militia and 150 Indians, and Governor Joseph Winslow marshaled them to attack the Narragansetts in November 1675. Colonial militia and Indian raiding parties spread over Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Maine over the next 6 months. Then the Narragansetts remained neutral, but several individual Narragansetts participated in raids of colonial strongholds and militias, so colonial leaders deemed the Narragansetts to be in violation of peace treaties. The colonials attacked and burned Indian villages throughout Rhode Island territory, joining with the attack on the Narragansetts' main fort called the Great Swamp Fight. An estimated 150 Narragansetts were killed, many of them women and children, and the Indian coalition was taken over by the Narragansetts. The colonists pushed back the colonial frontier in Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, and Rhode Island colonies, burning towns as they went, including Providence's in March 1676. The colonial missions defeated the Indian coalition, and by the end of the war, the Wampanoags and their Narragansett allies were almost completely destroyed. The war is considered to be one of the most deadliest wars of American colonizational history. Metacom, the son of the chief, fled to Mount Hope, where he was killed by the militia. In total, 12 towns got destroyed, and many more were damaged by the destruction. Plymouth and Rhode Island's economy and population were virtually destroyed and wiped out. More than half New England's towns got attacked by Indian colonies. This war eventually led to inspire colonists to seek independence from Britain because of the lack of support the colonies were receiving and the newfound freedoms the colonists found by the lack of that
Salem,
support.
Witch Trials was in Salem Village, Massachusetts, from January 1692 to early 1693. It was a whole year of neighbors accusing each other of being witches and engaging in witchcraft. Hundreds of people were accused, 19 were hanged, and 7 others died in jail. The belief in the supernatural, specifically in the devil's practice of giving certain humans known as witches the power to harm others in return for their loyalty, had emerged in Europe as early as the 14th century and widespread in colonial New England. Salem Village was a fearful town. Some of the harsh realities of life in the rural Puritan community of Salem Village included a recent smallpox epidemic, fear of being attacked by neighboring Native American tribes, and the rivalry with the much more affluent community of Salem Town. The trials were fueled by villagers' suspicion and resentment towards their neighbors and fear of outsiders. In January of 1692, 9-year-old Betty Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began having fits, contortions, and uncontrollable screaming. The local doctor, William Griggs, diagnosed the girls as being bewitched. Soon after, other girls in the village started to experience similar symptoms. In late February, arrests were issued for Caribbean slave Tituba, a homeless woman, Sarah Good, and an elderly woman, Sarah Osborne. The witches were accused of bewitching the girls. When the women appeared in court in front of 2 magistrates, the girls began to scream and appear as if they were being possessed. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne denied being witches, but Tituba confessed, most likely to avoid being convicted. She acted as an informer and claimed that there were other witches working with her. Like Tituba, accused witches started to confess and name other witches. In May of 1692, the newly appointed governor of Massachusetts, William Phips, ordered the establishment of a special court to hear and to decide witchcraft cases in select counties. The judges handed his first conviction against Bridget Stoughton on June 2nd. She was hanged 8 days later on what would become known as the Gallows Hill in Salem Town. 5 more people were hanged that July, 5 in August, and 8 more in September. In addition, 7 other accused witches died in jail, while the elderly Gaius Corey, Martha's husband, was pressed to death by stones after he refused to enter a plea deal for his arraignment. Increase Mather, the president of Harvard, and Cotton Mather suggested that witchcraft should have evidence just like any other crime. Governor Phillips dissolved the special court in October. Trials continued until early 1963. In January of 1967, Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting for the tragedy of Salem witch trials. The court later declared the trials unlawful. The Massachusetts colony passed legislation and restored the good names of the condemned and provided financial restitution for their heirs in 1771. Some of the forms that people used to try and figure out if women were actually witches was to tie them up and throw them in a lake. If the accusers would float up, then they were witches. If they would sink down and drown, then they were innocent.